So, guys, I got a little story for you.
Yeah.
A very famous guitar player came to town several years ago, and we were up in my studio jamming late at night, and I brought out the Angel's Envy bourbon.
Ooh.
Yes, it's very good, and they had never had this before. And my new friend, took some, and he was like, "Oh," and this weird look on his face. I don't know what. I'm like, "Do you like it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I can't have very much though." Okay. So years later, Richard Campbell and I are doing the England, Ireland, Scotland tour of .NET Rocks.
Fun.
And we meet up with this guy in Dublin. And I brought him a bottle of Angel's Envy. And he looks at his eyes get really wide and he goes, "Oh." And I said, "Yeah, I brought this from the States." He goes, "Oh, but I can't drink the brown liquor. It makes me fight." I'm like, "Oh, that explains the look, a few years ago." And then I said, "Okay, well, I'll just take it back." And he goes, No, I'll take it."
We'll fight a little bit.
Yeah. A little fighting.
That tracks with my childhood.
Yeah.
Hey guys, guess what? This is our 1 year anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Woohoo!
What'd you get me?
Yeah.
I got you some brown liquor.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks. I got you some nunchucks. How about that?
Yeah, I'll get you a firmware update.
Right.
Well, some of us will need that, as you'll see in some of the stories. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so it looks like Russia and Microsoft topped the list this week.
I mean, you could have not looked and said that.
Yeah. You haven't read any of them yet, have you, Carl? He's like, "I don't know, Russia, Microsoft."
Just the headlines. What happened in Russia?
So the Fancy Bear, one of our
the Fancy Bears,
one of the hacking groups, which is really SVR, is the name of the group. There's many intelligence services in Russia. There's SVR, there's FSB, there's GRU, and they're intentionally disconnected to keep Putin in power. But SVR is the one that did SolarWinds. They're commonly called Fancy Bear, and they're starting to use Google Drive, Dropbox for their command and control, which is something that you're not going to see criminal syndicates do because those services require identification in order to sign up, and therefore they can be traced.
Right.
Yeah.
But governments don't care. I mean, what's Russia going to do? Nothing.
Well, hey, I'd say some governments don't care.
Some governments don't care. Yeah, that's
Some
true.
Some governments
some
do care. Hey, kids, if you try and hack from the United States like that, you will get slapped.
No, I'm saying that the civilians can't, but if a government level like SSV, it's just those guys are never going to travel to the United States.
Right. The interesting thing about this attack is it starts very similar to every other attack we've talked about, or a lot of the major attacks, is it starts with phishing.
Yeah.
Right. It starts with manipulating a user to do something. Right. Send them an email that seems reasonable and they click on it. I think, unfortunately, services like Dropbox train people to click on these emails. A lot of you, I know Patrick and Carl and I have all used things like Dropbox, where you take a file, you go to share it, and when it says, "What's the email address the person you want to share to?" And you put the email address in, and literally that person gets an email with the big blue box on it that says, "Click here to open the files from so-and-so user."
Right.
So not very hard for an attacker to emulate that look and feel.
Right.
And Dropbox and other services have trained users to trust it. So it's it's an interesting vector in that the attack path has already been paved by Dropbox.
Yeah.
I never do that. I never share files that way.
I know you never do that.
Well, you said I do, so I wanted to make sure.
I do.
I do that, and I share files on Drive, but everybody I'm sharing with knows I'm about to share it with them.
Yes.
Like, we're on a Zoom call or something. Oh, let me share that with you. Check your inbox.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, so you're using two-band. I'm going to coin a new word: two-band file authentication. How about that?
That is 4 words, my friend.
Wait.
A new term.
And you should call it multi-band. Because remember,
multi-band.
2FA became MFA.
MFA.
So now you're ahead of the curve.
MBA.
Yeah.
Now you're multi-band authentication.
Now it's available in Smell-O-Vision. So you basically.
I need a multi-band to hold my pants up. That's what I need.
I think that's a great way to say it. Because honestly, if you sent me a link out of the blue, there's no way in hell I'm clicking on it.
Yeah, no way.
I'm not going to click on it. I don't do that.
Even Dwayne, if you said, "Hey, Carl, I just sent you a link. Go ahead, click on it," I wouldn't do it.
As Carl's like, I would show you the email. You could say you're the one who sent that. Still wouldn't click on it. No.
Still wouldn't click on it.
Still wouldn't click on it. Can we all address the fact that Smell-O-Vision would be terrible, Patrick? It would be terrible.
It would. It is very bad.
An abomination.
And very smelly. I mean, think of the attack vectors.
Well, there'd be a volume. There'd be a volume switch. You can turn it up or down.
Turn up the smell.
Oh, that's fresh mown grass. I like that. That's good. Oh,
yeah, and then all of a sudden,
turn that down.
Dog turn. Low tide. Turn it up.
Future version of security this week. Entire elementary school gets Smell-O-Vision attack.
Oh my God.
All right. So back to the Russian SVR thing. Is there anything anybody listening to this can do about it?
No, I think it's just be aware that the good news for the listeners is that most of this is targeting governments. They're not targeting your neighbor who, mows the lawn on Sunday morning. It's not, they're not script kiddies. It's not small actors. This is government, nation state.
But
so
you should
it's
still
just be aware.
Careful about clicking on items.
And especially if you have a government job, if you work at an industry that has intellectual property that might be surveilled by governments, that kind of thing.
Right.
But the other thing I would say is, if let's say you receive 20 emails from Dropbox a day, because that's your primary platform for sharing with your customer base, with your business to business connections, whatever it may be, always be diligent. Don't always assume. I've seen this 1,000 times, right? And that's what we typically see in the security world is, you the first time you do something in a secure sense, like going to a new building or into a, SCIF or whatever, and you follow all the right processes and et cetera. And after 10 years, you're like, oh my God, I've done this so many times, right? You start to assume that it's secure. If you receive these emails every single time, you need to make sure that they're coming from who they should be coming.
You always hit the garage door when you assume you know how to drive in your garage. You get too comfortable.
You assume the door's up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I had a real scare. I have a car with a lift gate. Yeah. And I had the lift gate open and I forgot about it and I started backing the car up and I'm like, that camera angle is really weird. And it backed all the way out. And luckily I have 10-foot doors. Oh. So it didn't hit. I managed to get all the way out the door, but sometimes you don't get that lucky. So there's things that require care all the time. Right. And clicking on links like that is one of those things where you have to pay attention all the time.
Wouldn't be any of our listeners.
Well, we're preaching the choir in that case. No. Preaching the choir.
All right. So there's some new ransomware coming to town, and it's a big bad Bart. My name's Luna.
Yeah, we should just call this Russian. We should call it Russian ransomware because that's what it is.
Is it? This is Luna we're talking about?
This is Luna.
It's only usable by people who speak Russian.
Okay.
Yes. It is advertised to Russia. Hey, might be a lot of people in the world that speak Russian who aren't in Russia.
So if you're running...
I studied 4 years of Russian.
Could be advertised for you.
All right. Calm down, guys. So is this really only a target of Russian people?
No, it's operated by.
It's
operated by.
Advertised to and operated by.
Okay, so you don't have to be Russian to get it. You
have to be Russian to give it.
I see. Yeah.
So this is interesting. So this is Kaspersky found advertised on a malware forum site, which I think is awesome. It's like some sort of marketplace for malware. This new piece of ransomware that will affect not only Windows but Linux and ESXi.
Yeah.
which we
that?
don't see a lot of.
I don't even know what that is.
It's the VMware operating system for the VMware controller.
Right.
Okay.
So it'll infect the host of your VMware
Yeah.
VMs.
Wow.
Yeah, which is an interesting target. It's not doing anything super sophisticated. It's using, it is obviously doing encryption, but it's using a lot of default either logins or whatnot to try and access things on the back end and then encrypt it. So from that standpoint, there's nothing new. But I will tell you this: hacker advice coming right now. You ready?
Oh,
Get the music. Cue the music.
damn. I don't have the music. Dang.
Dun,
We
dun,
promised the
I
listeners.
know. We'll have to wait next week. I'm sorry.
Can I do the Imperial March?
You can't. Not unless you're George Lucas.
I'll put it on my
Or
calendar
Mickey
right
Mouse.
How many notes can I do before we have to pay? Is it like 5? Dun, dun.
I think with Disney, it's
That's
just,
enough.
if you just say "Don," oh, you're in trouble. I think.
now. Dawn.
So, hacker advice. What's really interesting about this piece of ransomware is it's written in a language called Rust. What Rust is a multi-platform language. So a lot of times people say, okay, well, I'm going to write a program in C++. And that means you need to compile it for Windows. Heck, you need to compile it for Windows 32-bit and then Windows 64-bit.
To target
and then if you want it on Linux, you need different libraries that you target. And then you have to recompile it on 32-bit and 64-bit. And you want to target ESXi, you need different libraries. So that's just a pain in the butt. But if you want to write a universal piece of malware, do it in Rust. And it gives you two benefits. Not only can you deploy it to multiple platforms super simply, because Rust will run on almost anything, but it's also much harder to reverse engineer a Rust executable. So there's your hacker advice. Yeah, Rust should be your language of choice.
Is it a write-only language like C?
It is.
And by the way,
Yep.
I thought C was supposed to be the universal language. Doesn't it run everywhere?
No.
No?
No. And it still needs to be compiled for the right machine code.
Yeah. With the
Well,
target.
yeah, I know that, but
Right.
so does Rust.
With a target architecture.
Right. So the interesting thing about a Rust executable is the downside is it's a much larger executable because it contains, think almost like a virtual machine wrapped around it. So the virtual machine
no
piece knows how
kidding.
to interact with the right systems, and the code is only written.
And it
in
figures
one
out
language.
where it is.
Right. Exactly. Which is kind of nice.
So it's kind of like, I'm sorry, people, it's kind of like .NET, right? So it has a runtime?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And imagine .NET, but you took the runtime and wrapped it around the executable, so it
Got
can
it.
run anywhere, every runtime. Right. So that's what Rust is.
So we apologize for this brief geekiness of over your head talk, and we'll now resume
Developer interlude.
we will now resume security this week with our usual dumbing down of smart stories.
Or smarting
Wow.
down of dumb stories.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
All right. So is anybody in the States getting hit by Luna? Do we have to watch out for this, and how do they do it?
I think it's early days.
It is early days. So right now it's being advertised as a new wondrous tool. So it really depends on A, who purchases it to use it, and B, what their goal is. So it could just be a random ransomware group out of Russia, which means anybody in, the United States or UK should be worried. It could be that, I don't know, somebody in Canada buys it and decides to deploy it against, I don't know, who does Canada hate?
How do they deploy it? How does one get infected? Is it a phishing thing?
Well, let's talk about that. Just because you have a ransomware platform doesn't mean you're going to be able to propagate it effectively.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like just because you have a product doesn't mean you're going to be able to sell it effectively. So there's many ransomwares that come out and they never go anywhere. They only infect a niche pool, or they never infect anybody because of concomitance, or the group breaks up like Conti eventually did. So this is only going to be famous if people latch onto it who actually know how to distribute it. How do you distribute it? It depends on who your target audience is. It's mostly about phishing. So if you have a great ransomware but a bad phishing ability, you're not going to be able to make traction. It's just this is a potential. Right. It's like America's Got Talent. If they screw up the finale, they're still not going to be a star.
So it really does come down to people clicking on links and emails that they shouldn't click on.
Yeah.
That's the ransomware vector.
Yes.
Unless you combine a ransomware platform like this with something like a 0-day that you can go affect a lot of systems,
Right.
It's probably not
Right.
going to be the next big star unless they have a really good way of hooking people.
Right. Right. And one of the reasons I was interested in that particular article is just we do see in the security world right now a large-ish rush of malware now being written in Rust. Just because Rust is so ubiquitous in where it can run, and we see a lot more. It's not like I'm hyper targeting my malware. Now it's just mass destruction. I want to hit whatever system I possibly could hit, and I want it to run wherever it could possibly run. So
Yeah.
I think we'll see more of these.
Okay. All right. Now it's on to our other favorite player, Microsoft.
Yeah.
And particularly Office, which, if you remember, last week's show was called Has Microsoft Lost Their what? Mind.
Yes.
Patches?
And Grammarly corrected me and said the title should be It's Mind. But I'm sorry. Have the people at Microsoft lost their mind? That's basically what I wanted to say.
Well,
So yeah.
the crux of the story is that 80% of malware attacks are going after Office. And that
Sure.
some, you can argue that a lot of that is because it wasn't Dillinger that said it. I forget who said it, but one of the bank robbers of the 20th century said, why do you rob banks? He says, that's where the money is. People go after Office because those are the utilities that people use.
If you recall, last week, Microsoft rolled back the decision to block Office macros by default.
Right.
Because what could happen?
Yeah. Yeah, the highest used vector for deploying malware, and they decided to make it even easier, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
It's going to drive a lot of people away from Microsoft Office.
But to what?
I was going to say to what, Carl? To what?
To Google?
I like to use Star Office.
I mean, all the stuff that you do in Office is... Yeah, but I mean, people are... I'm sorry, but, Office is great, but I completely don't need it anymore unless I'm running PowerPoint on a laptop that I'm going to present with, right? But you can still make slides, and you can still have docs and spreadsheets and all that stuff.
The problem is if you deal with customers and you got to deliver them documents, you got to deliver them in a format that they can read and conveniently.
Well, you can still do that. You can go to Google Sheets, create a spreadsheet, and download it as an Excel sheet and send it to people.
You can.
And you can do the same with Google Docs, with Word, and their slides with PowerPoint.
Google has done the smart thing. Google in about 10 years is going to own the world because every single school system platform is using the Google Classroom. So all the kids, all the people who are going to be in the business world in 10 years are hyper trained in Google Sheets and their version of Office, and not quite as much in Microsoft Office.
Yeah, I could see the wave coming in 10 to 20 years, but I think it's gonna take a while, and I think we're gonna suffer this pain and see these articles for a while.
Sure. Yep.
Because everyone wants convenience, and so Microsoft's in the convenience business, not in the security business, and it's gonna waffle. What?
I'm looking at the stock price.
That's what you're saying, Patrick. What's that?
I'm looking at the Google stock price, and while it's up overall, it's
do you think that's because of us?
At a lower point? I don't know. Yeah. Don't take my advice and buy Google stock. You should make your own decisions.
Literally take no financial advice from either of the three
Take
of us.
no advice of any kind, but it's $114.
Except
right
patch your servers, please.
Yes, patch your servers.
So I think we're gonna be talking about this for a long time to come. I think that what we need to do is tell people that the default settings of Office and the default behavior that people have is not sufficient, and you need to be better than that.
Be better than that, people. Absolutely. All right, what's next? Does it have to do with my old Prius?
Possibly.
All right.
Do you have a GPS tracker?
I don't have a Prius anymore, but last week we learned about Honda, right? That hackers can unlock Honda cars remotely.
Yes.
And this is a related story on Bleeping Computer. Popular vehicle GPS tracker gives hackers admin privileges over SMS. What?
So
What?
so we build a lot of our own kit and we use GPS chips. We don't use this one. But this is it's a cheap one. It's not the highest end.
Yeah, think like fleet tracking. Like if you had, I don't know, 100 trucks that you were tracking where they went and where they were and all that good stuff. You'd buy something like this and put it in. It costs, I don't know, $20, and you'd put it in the car and it would just sit there and run. Right.
Like OnStar has such GPS tracker, but it's probably not using this one. If it did, then it'd be in the article.
So we're talking about a GPS tracker, not like a Garmin GPS.
No, they're talking about a chip.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And the chip is part of systems. This is a supply chain problem. This is a Log4j kind of problem.
It's the Mycotis MV720 device, which is present in vehicles used by several Fortune 50 firms, also governments in Europe and states in the U.S., a military agency in South America, and a nuclear plant operator. What could happen?
Carl, I'm gonna quiz you right now. You ready?
Okay, go ahead.
One of the issues with this is a default password is not strong. Now, I will tell you, the default password for this tracker is 6 digits. What do you think the password is?
Oh my God, really?
I'm just saying, guess.
6 digits. It's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
How the hell did you guess, Carl?
That's the first thing that came to mind. That's incredible. And it obviously doesn't require you to change the default password.
No. So there's a raft of problems with this particular service.
Oh man, I wish I could find these companies
and just shake them,
before they get hacked, and say, for $100,000, I'm going to shore up security on your device. Okay, what's that default password again?
Sadly, we've tried doing that, and the company gets really defensive.
Yeah, it's not a good way to approach people.
No,
of course not.
No,
it's kind of like walking up to saying, coming up to somebody and saying, "Hey, I've got some tips on hygiene for you."
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's taken about.
I noticed you have bad breath. Here, have a Tic Tac.
Do you know where your kids are? I do. I'm like,
do you have any naked pictures? You have any naked pictures of your wife? Want to buy some?
All bad ways.
All bad ways.
Yeah, all bad ways to talk to someone. So what's interesting about this one as well is not only is there very weak passwords, but there also was a hard-coded master password for their API server.
Oh.
So if let's say you write an application, so you have all these trackers out there, and there's multiple pieces of software that you can use to plot out where the cars have driven during the day or whatever. And all of them are getting that information through an application programmer interface or an API. Unfortunately, there is a master password hard-coded into that, so you can request anybody's data.
So the people that built the software obviously did not care one bit about security.
So that's tough. Because they either didn't care or didn't understand. Because security a lot of times is not the main feature that people are looking for, right?
And most people aren't trained in it.
Right. Whoever was paid to put this API together, it's not like someone said, okay, I need you to allow, people to write software to track their cars and trucks, and I need the API to do X, Y, and Z. By the way, it needs to be rock solid, super secure. Most people, that's not on the list because you're paying for their time to create the API.
Yes, but you would think somebody would have done in a code review or whatever, said, hey, this password is ridiculous. And you hard-coded the API password in the software.
In their defense, only a genius like Carl Franklin could guess it.
No, come on now. Yeah,
I think it's adorable, though, that Carl thinks everybody does code reviews.
The problem is most people don't think of security at all until it bites them.
Cute.
Yeah, you're right. It's true.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they also then try and bolt on security at the end. We see this quite a bit with development projects where all the features, because you start off with a smoke and mirror sort of demo to your constituents, whoever you're building the application for, right? You build the functionality in so they can see the clicking and all the wonderful, hey, this is what it's going to do.
Right.
And you keep going from there with features. And then at the end you go, oh, crap.
All those shortcuts.
We need to add in logging. We need to make sure that, people don't access the data you shouldn't. So they try and bolt it on. And that's always a bad way to do it.
It is possible, but it just means that you're now plugging holes instead of
Yeah,
working within a secure system.
People are trying to make money first. It's the bottom line. Shipping's a feature. Yeah. Security is not in many people's eyes.
It's really just disheartening, isn't it?
But it kills a lot of startups because they end up getting to a point where they can't sell their product because it does everything everybody wants, but nobody trusts it. We had a module with a Shopify that was unusable, and they lost a major client because that client hired us to take a look at it.
Is it okay that you said Shopify?
Yeah, because they were a vendor using Shopify.
Okay.
It wasn't Shopify itself.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, that's good.
I write the contracts. I know what I can get away with.
Hang on a second. Shopify is calling. I'm gonna let that
Google's
go to voicemail. Yeah. All right. So what's next? Speaking of Google, Chrome has a 0 day.
Yeah,
right?
And it's being used to infect journalists with spyware. So journalists are really having a bad decade.
Yeah.
First off, I want to know who names the spyware.
Kangaroo.
Because it has the most awesome name. No.
Candy-roo?
High interest individuals in the Middle East with the Devil's Tongue spyware. Devil's Tongue. That sounds so awesome.
It's because journalists have devil's tongues. It sounds like a hot sauce. It sounds like that, or it's like a cinnamon whiskey.
Oh, that's disgusting. I can't stand that stuff.
Fireball.
That would be a great
it's horrible.
name.
It's horrible. I see people walking out of the package store with sleeves of Fireball. Like that's like the new party hotness, but it's not. Oh man.
It's because it's $20 a gallon. So it's not so bad.
My father, when I was 21, I had a highball, which is just, like whiskey
Scotch.
and 7-Up, right?
Oh, okay.
And I remember my father, who didn't drink at all, but he's recalling his college days, and he says, "Why would you ruin a perfectly good whiskey with crappy soda?"
Mm.
Well, you've taken that lesson to heart now.
Yeah. Well, I was 21, so I said, because I can drink it, and it's kind of tasty and fun.
It doesn't taste like gasoline.
It doesn't taste like gasoline. But then I learned to appreciate a good whiskey. And now I don't even hardly drink anymore, so.
No, because it's terrible for you kids, and you should not.
Makes me fight!
Welcome to Ireland.
That same event, Richard and I were pounding down Jameson's, and he was drinking Guinness, and he says, "How can you guys drink that stuff?" It's like, I don't know. We become happy,
Yeah, it's
docile.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, Chrome 0 day.
Yeah.
I think there's not much to talk about, just that it's something that there's an example of a 0 day being used by a vendor. As Israel's getting big on the spyware vendors, right. and it's being abused. It's being used against journalists around the world.
Okay.
Well, and the other thing is, Google is really, really, really good about once these things are discovered, and whether they're discovered through the Pwn to Own programs or the bug bounty programs or whatever. Once they're discovered, Google is on top of patching these things. So this was actually patched July 4th. So if you're using Chrome, and you open it up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little thing that says update. Because you don't have it automatically updating, just go do it. Just go update it.
Or better yet, automatically update.
All you really have to do is close the browser and open it again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be automatically updating. So the last two should go quick. The first story is that the CISA Homeland Security has said that Log4j is now ubiquitous. It's everywhere. But its damage is starting to go down because the big places have been patched. But it's still a vector into a lot of different places. It's still a tool that you have to be worried about. It's endemic is really the way they're talking about it.
Right. We're going to be living with it forever.
Are they talking about it as endemic in a greater sense, like this type of not understanding libraries that are included in software? Or are we talking like Log4j specifically?
They're talking about specifically. So they released an unprecedented report, and they declared that it is endemic, meaning it's so widespread and so big that we're probably not going to ever clean it all up.
Wow.
Because we're not going to actually identify all the places it's in. But it's starting to become less impactful because it's starting to become in more sideline places. So in other words, the big vendors are fixing it. The small vendors have not. So it's going to be part of our toolkit forever. we're always going to try
absolutely.
Log4j because it's probably going to be in there.
Log4j will be the new spaghetti.
Yeah.
You just throw it up against the wall and see
Exactly.
if it sticks.
And as
Yeah.
we said before, it also infects Android phones, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you have all updates and go through your phone, kids, and any apps that you haven't used in a month, just delete them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a good practice anyways.
Yeah.
It is, honestly. I wish that was an auto feature in like iPhone. Like, hey, if you haven't opened an app in a long time, just get rid of it. But,
And the last story is really quick. Botnet malware disguised itself as password cracker for industrial controllers.
What'd you call me?
If you're using tools for security,
what'd you call me?
okay, cracker. If you're using tools to increase your security, rule 1 is make sure you know where the tools are in their provenance, because there's nothing worse than somebody grabbing a tool that turns out to be infected in its own right.
And you thought you were doing a good thing when in fact you were helping the hackers.
Yeah, you open the door.
So how do we get this botnet malware, and how do we know that we're getting it? What's the vector?
This one is actually deployed on multiple sites, shady sites that you might find them on. So you do a Google search for, this type of
Password
software.
cracker.
And unfortunately, every time you do a Google search for these types of software, you're going to run into 9 out of 10 sites look really shady. You just need to know what you're running and trust who you're downloading the software from. So if it's not a piece of software that, if the developers of the software are not the ones you're downloading it from, it's probably not a good idea to be downloading from there.
It's currently mostly pointed towards trying to make money, crypto mining, password cracking. It's looking for wallets in memory, and it'll change those wallets dynamically so that any money transferred to them goes to their wallet instead of yours. So right now, it's not like destroying nuclear plants, but it's going after controller systems, industrial controllers.
Well, I can give some advice to people. So if you lost your password to, I don't know, a website and the forgot password thing doesn't work and you're frustrated, don't go Google searching for password crackers.
Oh my God, no.
Don't do
Hey,
it. Just
ask
call
me.
somebody.
I'll send you call me. I'll send you an email to click on. It'll reset your password.
I just asked Dwayne what my password is, and he always tells me
Don't
it's 1, 2,
click on
3,
that
4, 5,
email.
6. It's always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for some reason.
Anybody wants an email to reset a password, just let me know.
Hey, have we talked about DuckDuckGo? They're not a sponsor, and I'd like them as a sponsor. That would be great. But do you guys know about them? What do they do?
Not only do I know about them, that is actually who I use as my search engine.
Really?
So,
And is it a search engine or is it a browser? What is it?
No. It's a search engine. So think like
Okay.
Google. But it's a search engine that's dedicated into not tracking you between searches and not, aggregating and keep track of all your data. Take, for example, Google right now.
Okay.
If I go to Google and I type in, I don't know, new iPhone, Google automatically
Right.
puts in the suggestions at the end, right?
Right.
My
Right, sure.
suggestions at the end are always exploitation. That's it. Like if I do new iPhone, it's like exploit, or
'Cause
I
Google
do
knows
Windows,
you.
it says exploit because Google's like, listen,
Oh,
98% of your
Dwayne.
searches are exploit. Exactly.
Dwayne,
I'm like,
how can I
okay.
help you? What about you want the usual, Dwayne? Come on in.
You
Couple of
looking to
hot
break in
dogs and some
somewhere? Come on.
exploits.
Yeah. So at
like,
that point, I
Norm,
was like,
Norm.
okay, I gotta stop using this search engine. I gotta go somewhere else.
All right. So the key is that, anytime you search anything into Google, Google knows about you. And that's why when you go to Bleeping Computer, you see ads for the stuff that you just bought.
Mhm. Exactly. 100%.
So DuckDuckGo is good. And the search engine results are as good as Google or Bing?
They are really good. I've found probably in the last year that I've been dedicated using DuckDuckGo better than Bing. You're a silly man. Nobody uses Bing.
I
But,
use Bing. It's great.
Do you?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I get better results with Bing than I do with Google for stuff that I'm
impressed.
looking for.
I'm impressed. So
Yeah.
using DuckDuckGo, there's probably
Well,
been maybe 3 times I've had to go out
In
and
your
use Google.
in your defense, Dwayne, he only searches for password crackers, so that's all he searches for. So
And the cheese to go with it.
That's right.
Yeah, see what I did there. All right, you wacky people. We got to go.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, happy anniversary. And I put right theme song on my calendar, so with any luck, we'll have it next week.
Thank you. I'll have more hacker advice next week.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
See you later. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.